Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is time. It is the 2021-2022 Premier League season review from free fall to Fairytale as it's titled, because I made that up yesterday and thought, you know what, that actually sounds quite good. You could say from protests to pitch invasions. You could title this season in any, or last season should we say, in any way, shape or form that you wanted to. It really, really was a roller coaster of a footballing season for all of us. One that I'm sure we hope to never go through again, but one that provided us with arguably the best moment of a lot of our lives as Evertonians. Now, I know a lot of people will have watched Everton win trophies and, you know, lift up cups and win European titles and league titles and all of that sort of stuff. And I get that. And obviously I understand that, you know, finishing 16th and winning the penultimate game of the season to stay up and having a pitch invasion isn't what football should be. And I completely agree. We shouldn't be sitting here celebrating that night. We should be sitting here absolutely disgusted that we were in that situation in the first place. And I am absolutely disgusted that we were in that situation in the first place. But coming from an Evertonian who is 24 years old and the majority of his life being an Evertonian has just been mediocre season after season of not really doing anything. Okay, we might have finished in Europe the odd season, or we might have, you know, at one point looked like we could win the FA Cup, get to a semi-final, get to a final, or get to a quarter-final of a Carabao Cup. But, you know, most seasons that I've lived through as an Evertonian have ultimately just ended with nothingness, really. The last couple of months of the season have just been, you know, absolutely nothing to play for, nothing really to gain, just sort of going through the motions. And that Crystal Palace game, I still stick by, and I said it on the night and I'll say it again, is the best I've felt as an Evertonian. That was my best experience of Everton Football Club in the 24 years of supporting this club. But it come from the worst situation. It come from the worst season we've had in my lifetime. It come from arguably the worst manager we've had in my lifetime, the worst few months of being an Evertonian, and it was just an absolute maniac of a season, wasn't it? Manic. It was a manic season, and I still stick by saying Amazon, Netflix, Apple TV, whoever it may be, they've all missed a massive trick by not filming this Everton season, because they could have sold that season, or the documentary, or the All or Nothing, or whatever you want to call it. They could have sold it for a ridiculous amount of money, because you literally couldn't have written what we went through in the last 12 months. And, you know, we are going to go through it today. We're going to talk about the results. We're not going to sit here and talk in depth about each result. You know, we're not going to sit and do 10 minutes on every single game, because a lot of them were games that I'm sure, you know, we've all forgotten and will continue to want to forget. But, you know, we're going to go through them in sort of periods. And, you know, the start of the season, which was bright, we started relatively well. Then obviously things didn't go too well. Then it got really, really sour. Then we started to get really worried. We brought Frank Lampard in. It didn't change overnight. And then, you know, this season, as I said, ultimately had gone from fans being the most divided they've ever been, with protests against the board and protests against players, and fans running onto the pitch to confront players at the end of games because they weren't happy with performances, to fans being arguably the most united we've been in the last decade or so, and fans running on the pitch to hug and, you know, and scream with the players because of you know, the game against Crystal Palace. So it's been such a, as I said, it's been such a roller coaster of a season, you know, one that, again, there was very, very few ups from. But it is mad when you think about how we've gone from sort of protests against the board, and, as I said, fans running on the pitch to, you know, protest the players' efforts and performances, to fans running on the pitch to almost celebrate the effort and performance, certainly in that game against Crystal Palace, albeit I'm fully on board with the fact that that season wasn't good enough. And whilst that might have provided me with my best memory of Everton Football Club, or certainly, the happiest I've felt in an instant with Everton Football Club. I fully agree that it was a disgraceful season, and it should never have been like that. It should never, ever have been like that, and I still stick by the fact that I think people need to lose their jobs. I think people need to be seriously questioned, and ultimately it needs to be understood that this can never, ever happen again. It can never happen again. It's an absolute travesty, monstrosity that Everton Football Club were in that situation. But yeah, what a whirlwind of a last few months it was for all of us. And we've been away from it now for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And I don't know whether anybody else is feeling this, but I'm sort of sitting here myself thinking, I can't wait to get back to Goodison. And I find myself thinking it, and then I find myself saying, what are you talking about? You've literally just been through the most difficult, stressful, anxious, angry, upset and frustrating 3-4 month period of your life watching this football club. You've had 2 weeks off and you all of a sudden can't wait to get back. What's going on? And I'm thinking that myself as well. I really don't know what's going on, but I just can't wait to be bouncing down Goodison Road again. And I do know what's going on. What's going on is I witnessed what Everton Football Club could be like for those remaining 4 or 5 games of the season. Greeting the coach before the game with the blue flares and the smoke and the singing and the chanting and the getting behind each other, getting behind the players. The performances on the pitch vastly improved in that period as well, because the players knew they had nowhere to hide. They couldn't put in shit-house performances as they'd done previously. They had to go out there, they had to win, they had to perform. So that's why I want to go back, because I want to be stood on Goodison Road, covered in blue smoke, singing and screaming and shouting my heart out, and I want to be sat here doing an instant match reaction where I've got no voice, I've got no sort of recollection of where I am or what I'm doing. I feel absolutely bladdered despite not having a drop of alcohol. I'm just living off pure emotion, because that's what that Thursday against Crystal Palace was. But anyway, it's the season review. We're not just here to talk about the Palace game, because the Palace game only happened because of how poorly run this football club is and how poor the previous 4, 5, 6 months before that game was. And listen, the Palace game should never ever have happened. We shouldn't have been in a situation where we had to go and ultimately drag these players through this situation, because that's exactly what happened. The fans saved this football club. It's as simple as that. I will not be told otherwise. You can come here and you can sit and you can talk to me about Alex Iwobi working a bit harder since Frank Lampard come in, or certain players coming back to fitness, Dominic Calvert-Lewin coming in clutch in the last game of the season, or Richarlison working hard. You can put all of that, even Jordan Pickford, and I'm not blaming these players, by the way. Without Jordan Pickford, we'd have been relegated. Without ultimately Richarlison's efforts, Anthony Gordon's efforts would have been relegated. But the fans dragged this football club out of this situation. It is as simple as that. Without the fans standing up and going, actually, do you know what? If we don't start getting behind these players, if we don't get behind this manager, if we don't get behind our football club, if we don't start making some noise and creating an atmosphere, we're gone. And the minute we did that, the minute things improved. But it all started, I suppose, this time last year, didn't it? This season, typically when we do a season review, the first thing we talk about is the opening game of the season, because that's what you're reviewing. You're reviewing the season prior, and that season starts on the opening game of the season, and that would obviously be the game. It's remiss of me to sit here and say, right, let's start with the Southampton game, because that's not how the season started. The season started a week. In fact, I don't even think it was a week. Maybe 5-6 days after the previous season had finished. I'm not too sure what's going on with the internet connection here. I don't know if it's dropping out anyway. Let me know. But the season started, what was it? A week after the previous season had finished, and it started when we found out that Carlo Ancelotti was leaving Everton Football Club to rejoin Real Madrid. And again, I'm not going to sit here and talk in depth about that, because we've done countless amounts of live streams and countless amounts of videos around that time when Carlo Ancelotti left the football club. But it really, really knocked the fan base, and I think those at the football club, players included, for 6, didn't it? Because none of us expected it to happen. And to be fair, I don't think Carlo Ancelotti expected it to happen either. When he left the Etihad Stadium on the final day of the 2019-2020 season, I don't think he fully expected that, 2 months later, he'd be managing Real Madrid. I think he thought, right, I'm going to go away. I'm going to have a couple of weeks away with my family. The players are going to have a couple of weeks away, and then we'll be back. We'll be getting our heads down and we'll be preparing for the next season. And all of a sudden, a week after that season had finished, when we were all sitting here saying, and I remember doing the season review last season when Carlo was still the manager, and I remember doing it and sitting here saying, again, it wasn't great. We had a great start, we had an alright middle, and we had a poor end. The away form was great, home form was awful, but we've got something to build on now. We know where we need to improve, we need to go and get X, Y and Z in, and then hopefully we'll challenge for Europe next season. And it was almost quite a positive season review, because although the season wasn't great, we were all sitting here thinking, do you know what, actually, if we do a little bit of building here, we've got James Rodriguez, we've got Luca Dean, we've got Alan and Decore who had a positive season. We can actually go and, we can go and build on this and potentially fight for the European space in the next season. And then all of a sudden, within a week, he's gone. And let's be honest, Carlo left within the blink of an eye. I remember sitting in a restaurant on the Monday. It was I can remember it as clear as day. I can't remember why I was in the restaurant. It was a Monday. I remember sitting in the restaurant. It was an Italian in town. Ironically, one of the restaurants that Carlo Ancelotti frequented during his time at the football club. And I remember reading it coming through on my phone and just thinking, nah, it's nonsense. That Spanish media creating hype, Spanish media creating nonsense stories so that people give them clicks. But it was, Real Madrid are interested in Carlo Ancelotti, and then an hour later it was Carlo Ancelotti interested in going back to Real Madrid if the deal can be made. And I still remember looking at it thinking, bullshit, absolute bullshit. It's never happening. And the Tuesday, I woke up and literally overnight, they say nothing changes overnight, but literally overnight, the decision had been made. And then the entirety of Tuesday morning was just an inevitability of waiting for this deal to be announced. And I think mid-afternoon, it was agreed, and then I think something like 6-7 o'clock, it was officially announced. And we'd gone from 6-7 o'clock the night before, this not even being a situation, to literally 24 hours later, Carlo Ancelotti's left Everton Football Club. And I remember doing a live stream the day after, entitling it, Where Do We Go From Here? Because we had Marcel Brands at the club, who was coming under a lot of criticism, was coming under a lot of scrutiny. We didn't have a manager. We had a group of players who will have all been thinking the same thing as us. What the fuck's gone on here? We had a board that we knew were inept, and again, an owner that had made dreadful managerial decisions in the past, barring Carlo Ancelotti. So we were all sitting here thinking, well, where do we go from here? I remember talking about David Moyes returning. I remember talking about Christophe Galtier. I remember talking about Antonio Conte. And after 6 weeks, 7 weeks of managerial talk and managerial discussion, and who will Everton bring in? Will it be this manager? Will it be that manager? Who suits Everton best? Instead of going out and bringing in a manager relatively early on so that they had time to come into the football club, settle in, have the team for a full pre-season, get to know the players, we went on this 6-7 week search for a manager and ended up with Liverpool legend, Champions League winning Liverpool manager Rafael Benitez, which was just baffling. And the more and more you think about it, the more and more you actually realise how suicidal of an appointment that was by Farhad Moshiri. And I will use that word because it was never, ever, ever going to work. Never, ever, ever going to work. You had selections of the fans who were putting banners and bed sheets outside the Goodison Park before Benitez had even been announced, expressing their, let's say, discontent at the idea of him becoming Everton manager. Some of them even expressing vile sort of threats, and I will call them vile because there was no need for it. But it showed how how disinterested the majority of the fan base were with this appointment. And even the Evertonians that were sort of not behind the appointment, but that were willing to accept it, it was more of a, well, right, let's see what he can bring. And it was, let's look at the positives. He's won a Champions League. He's a defensive manager. He's done well at Newcastle. It wasn't like a, get in, I'm excited, I'm happy for this. This is the right man to take us forward. It was more of a like, let's just see how it goes and I'll get behind him because I'm an Evertonian. And that was very much my stance on the situation. But all of a sudden, we'd gone from one of the best managers of all time and a manager that we all thought would be the one to take us forward, a manager that said openly a couple of times himself, he wants to take us into the new stadium. He wants to be the man to take us into Bramley-Moore. To an ex-Liverpool manager whose biggest sort of advice to Evertonians as to why to get behind them was that he knows the city. Nothing to do with the football club, nothing to do with his experience as a man. It was, well, I know the city. That was his biggest selling point. And I think from that point on, we sort of should have known that, and another situation that happened in and around that time that we won't talk about. We probably should have known that this was going to be quite a rocky season, to be honest with you. Benitez obviously come in, managed a couple of pre-season games at Finch Farm, I think we played Blackburn, where Jean-Philippe Gbamin scored. And then, obviously, got ready to set out to Florida with the team for the Florida Cup, which obviously we knew about. There was murmurs at the time that James Rodriguez wasn't happy with the managerial appointment. He wanted to leave Everton Football Club. Once again, a select section of the fans sort of, within James Rodriguez's corner. And, we're saying this is a disgrace. How are we going to bring Benitez in and let James go? A selection of the fans within Benitez's corner saying James doesn't want to be here. If he doesn't want to be here, get rid of him. It was just a split straight away before the season had even started, before the ball had even been kicked, before the pre-season ball had even been kicked. There was a split in the fan base. There was a discontent. There was as I said, a divide, and it wasn't a divide of you've got this opinion, you've got that opinion. We don't agree, but fair enough, let's move on. It was a divide of, no, you're wrong. How can you get behind this? This is disgraceful. How can you get behind that? It was really, really toxic before the ball had even been kicked. We brought in a couple of players, Damari Gray, Andros Townsend, Asmir Begovic, of course, come in. And, again, there was a little bit of positivity around that. We started again. You think back to last summer and the things that went wrong, and every second you're remembering something else. We found out fairly quickly into Rafa Benitez's tenure that he was going to have no money to spend. And maybe that was the reason as to why the club went with Rafa Benitez in the first place, because he was one of the only managers with some form of pedigree who was happy to accept that we were fucking skint. Okay, we could have looked at Antonio Conte, we might have looked at Galtier, but the pair of them might have said, you've got no money to spend, so I'm not coming to you, because I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do, rebuild the team, bring in the transfers I need to bring in. We brought in Asmir Begovic on a free, who was a backup goalkeeper. We all knew that was going to be his role. I don't think anybody was particularly angry at that. We brought in Andros Townsend for a free, and we brought in Damari Gray. And at one point, it looked like that was going to be it. That was our summer transfer window, and effectively it was, wasn't it? Now, okay, we managed to keep a hold of Richarlison, and we managed to keep a hold of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which I think were big sort of, I suppose, plus points of last summer. It was quite open that the club allowed Richarlison to go and play in the Olympics with Brazil last summer on the intention that he would give us another season as an Everton player, to which he did. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, of course, had just had a really good season under Carlo Ancelotti. Probably could have left that summer on the back of that season. Didn't, stayed at the football club. But again, it was all a sort of, well, are these the three signings we're going to make this summer? 4 weeks ago we were sitting here, 7 weeks ago we were sitting here saying, got Carlo, we're going to spend this, we're going to spend that, we're going to spend the other, and we're going to be in, fighting for European places next season. Now, we've got Rafael Benitez. We've brought in Andros Townsend, who had one goal in his previous Premier League season. Damari Gray, who'd just been over in Germany, and his last spell in the Premier League wasn't great. Asmir Begovic, who was always going to be a backup, and then Solomon Rondon. So, again, the summer was just... The transfers weren't exciting as per se, although Damari Gray and Andros Townsend ended up coming in and doing well. The managerial appointment wasn't exciting. None of it was exciting going into the season. We had the Florida Cup. It became quite obvious that James Rodriguez wasn't happy at the football club. He was doing countless amounts of Twitch live streams talking about leaving the club and, not really getting on with the manager and stuff like that. And it was just a real sort of, this is going to be a rough season. I don't think any of us expected it to be as rough as it went. But it was always like, this has been a rough start to a new season. as I said, the financial situation was something that none of us, we knew we were sort of in a poor position financially. We didn't think we were in a only able to spend £1.5 million position financially. We didn't think it was that bad. None of us did, let's be honest. But all of that happens. We have pre-season, as I said. We win a couple of friendlies at Goodison. Friendlies that for some reason we weren't allowed to watch. Don't know why the club persist on putting friendlies on at Finch Farm, and not allowing fans to watch them. It makes no sense. I want to watch every Everton game. And this has got nothing to do with Benitez, this is the club, but I want to watch every Everton game. If Everton are playing, I don't care if they're playing Manchester United in an FA Cup final, or they're playing Rotherham in a pre-season game at Finch Farm where the academy players are playing. I want to watch every Everton game possible I can watch. But maybe that's just me. We then jet off to Florida, of course. We win the Florida Cup. There's a bit more positivity about it, albeit we won it on penalties ultimately, and it wasn't a very good performance. But there was a bit of positivity. Okay, we've gone away to Florida. The players seemed relatively happy. We were working hard. We won the tournament we wanted to win. We come back. We lost to Manchester United in that final pre-season game, but it wasn't. I don't think many were really that heartbroken by that. And then the season starts, and we have our first couple of games. Southampton at home, a 3-1 win. Leeds away, a 2-2 draw. Brighton away, a 2-0 win. And Burnley at home, a 3-1 win. So our first 4 games of the season, we've won 3 of them, and we've drawn 1. And the game against Leeds, we really should have won. I was there at Ellen Road on that day. We really should have won. But we've had a positive start. Beating Burnley 3-1. Beating Southampton 3-1, both at Goodison. Beating Brighton away, who at the time hadn't lost the game. And drew with Leeds in a game that we should have won. And that was August. And you were sort of thinking, August into September. And you were sort of thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. Where do we, we've had a decent start. Now, listen, I know some people will say, but we were shite in the game against Southampton, Cam, and we were. The game against Southampton, for 45 minutes, we were awful. It was one of the worst first half performances I've ever witnessed as an Evertonian. One of the worst. But we come out in the second half and we changed it. Abdoulaye Doucouré scored a worldie to make it 2-1 towards the end. I think Dom got a header to make it 3-1. The Leeds game, again, we were winning that game twice. Dom scores a penalty. They come back, okay, we're away from home, first away game, first home game for Leeds back in the Premier League with fans in the stadium, so it was always going to be difficult. We go away to Brighton. Again, Dom gets another goal. We win that one comfortably. Damari Gray at this point is on fire. Scored his opening goal for the club against Leeds, of course. Gets his second against Brighton. And then all of a sudden, Dom picks up an injury. An injury that we all thought, I think, at the time, okay, he might be out for a few weeks. An injury that ultimately we come to find out was going to keep him out effectively for the entire season, which wasn't great, was it really? To say the least. But again, we bounced back against Burnley, and again, not a great start to the game, whatsoever. In fact, wasn't a great performance at all by Everton. We just had a magical period of 9 minutes where we managed to score 4 goals, one of them obviously being offside, but 3 of them being onside. Again, started really, really poorly. We're struggling in the game. All of a sudden, we come out of nowhere. Anzos Townsend scores an absolute worldie. We managed to win the game 3-1. And again, you're thinking, well, okay, we've had 2 games there where we've started poorly, but we've managed to come back into them and dominate in the end. And then we played Villa away, and we lost 3-0. And again, I said I'm not going to sit here and talk individually about every game, but this one was an interesting one because we lost so heavily, and it was Rafa Benitez's first loss as Everton manager, Premier League loss as Everton manager, and it was almost like how are fans going to react to this? What will the general consensus be now that we've lost the game in the Premier League? And in that game against Villa, it was very similar to the Burnley game, only flipped on its head, really, wasn't it? It was an even game. Neither side really were in it much. Neither side were really threatening much. And then all of a sudden, within the space of 9 minutes, Villa are 3-0 up and we've lost the game. there was questions being asked. There was certainly Blues that at that point were like, right, get him out now. He's lost the game, get him out. Obviously, the Blues that weren't behind him in the first place, understandably so. But I feel like most people were like, well, okay, it's our first loss. It's a bit of a mad situation because it was a nothing game, and then all of a sudden, they've scored 3 goals in the space of 5 minutes. But we'll move on and see what the next game can bring. Obviously, we played Norwich. We beat Norwich at home 2-0, relatively comfortable. We drew at Man United away, which was a big one because it was a really, really, really good performance. Manchester United away, really good performance at Old Trafford. Andros Townsend getting the equaliser, of course, and we had a chance to win it at the end of the game. Tom Davies goes 1-on-1 with De Gea, and instead of shooting, he decides to pass it to Yerry Mina, who does score, but is stood in an offside position. Whereas if Tom had have actually had a shot, I think, and I've had a bit more confidence, I think Tom Davies would have scored. And these last 3 games have been without Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Richarlison had picked up injuries in between. I think at this point, Yerry Mina was still very inconsistent injury-wise. But, we'd managed to get through the first couple of months of the Premier League into October with only 1 loss, being in a freakish game against Villa, drawing in Old Trafford, winning the home games you would expect us to win, winning an away game, which, considering we only won 2 last season, and one of them was the second away game of the season, I don't think any of us would have thought we'd have then gone on to not win another one until Leicester. Well, that was the end of the good time, I suppose, if you want to call it the good. And I'm very cautious about calling it the good time because it wasn't a good time whatsoever. It really, really wasn't a good time whatsoever, was it? It was it was a time in which we were winning games that we all expected to win. And we put in a good performance at Old Trafford, to be fair. We put in a good performance at Old Trafford. But for the most part, we were winning the games that you fully expected us to win. And then, what we all expected to happen, happened, didn't it? Really. We had that drop. And that drop was, as the title reads, free fall. And the reason it was free fall is because we could not get out of it to save our lives. We played West Ham United at home again, and I remember this game. I remember being fuming we'd lost this game because we'd lost another game in the Prem, and I remember being absolutely fuming about it. In fact, I think I might have even said at the time, I think we'll go unbeaten at home this season, which was a mad thing to say. But we lost to West Ham at Goodison again, a poor game. Not much in it again, a nothing game between 2 sides that seemed evenly matched, and then they got a goal in the last 10 minutes, which is scruffy and poor defensively. But again, a game that a lot of people were disheartened about because of the situation. But a lot of people were sort of like, well, again, it's an unlucky result. It's an unlucky defeat. I think it's fair to say, pardon me, that neither team really deserved to win the game on that day. West Ham just took a chance and we didn't take our chances. But then things got really bad. Really quickly, didn't they? A 5-2 defeat to Watford at Goodison, which, considering we were 2-1 up with 10 minutes to go, is just a disgrace. A 2-1 defeat to Wolves. I was there at Molineux that day. I think that was the day that a lot of Blues that were previously supportive of Benitez was sort of like, right, get him out now. He's done. I remember him playing Jean-Philippe Gbamin in a midfield 2, which was just a managerial decision that I wouldn't make. Never mind a manager that has won a Champions League and is meant to be one of the most decorated tacticians of all time, or whatever he calls himself. Playing Jean-Philippe Gbamin, who'd not played a Premier League game in 3 years, in a midfield 2, was an absolute baffling decision. I still can't quite understand how he managed to make that one. We then had Spurs at home. We drew 0-0 in that game. It was relatively boring. Spurs were, I think at that point, had either just sacked Nuno, what's his name? Espirito Santo, or were just about to sack him. We then lost 3-0 to City. We then lost 1-0 to Brentford. We then had the Merseyside derby. Now, a lot of Blues who I've spoken to post this season and post Benitez believe he should have gone after Watford. Now, if Everton were ran like a proper football club and were ran well, he would have been sacked after Watford. It's as simple as that. You don't lose 5-2 to Watford at Goodison and keep your job, in my opinion. You just don't. Especially considering where we thought we were going to be this season, or thought we should have been this season. But we got to that derby, and as I said, you know, there was a lot of talk about it then, and a lot of pundits and stuff where Everton fans only want him gone because he's Benitez and he's ex-Liverpool. The reality was, we'd lost to West Ham, Watford, Wolves, 3 on the bounce with Zoo to Spurs, we'd lost to City, and we'd lost to Brentford. So that was a month of Premier League football where we'd not won a game, and the only point we picked up was against Spurs at home, including losses to Wolves away, Watford at home, Brentford away. Games that we should be getting points out of. We get to the Merseyside derby, and I strictly remember sitting here and saying, in the summer when Rafa Benitez was first announced as Everton manager, Michael says, catch this later, Cam Lava Father's on. Go on, mate, no worries. I strictly remember saying in the summer when Rafa Benitez was announced as Everton manager, what do we do if we are 2-0 down in the Merseyside derby? We've not won for a number of weeks. We're struggling. The players are struggling. And at this point, as I said, Dominic Calvert-Lewin was well and truly out injured. Richarlison was in and out with injuries. I think Ben Godfrey had picked up an injury at this point. Yerry Mina was in and out. Michael Keane was shite. Mason Allgate was shite. What do we do if we're 2-0 down at Goodison and they start singing his name? And that is exactly what happened. We come to the Merseyside derby. We lose it 4-1. We get back in the game at 2-0. And then Seamus Coleman decides he just can't be arsed defending properly. Gives them a third. They go on and get a fourth. Obviously, the entirety of the away end is singing and shouting his name. And that, for me, was the time he should have gone. That for me, that game was the... And it wasn't necessarily the look at... Well, it was the results, because, as I said, we'd gone a month of Premier League football without winning a game, and I don't think any manager survives that in this day and age, rightly or wrongly. But it was also the toxicity at that point around the football club. The fans were, as I said, the most divided we've probably ever been. There was fans running on the pitch, I think, after that Merseyside derby and confronting players. The players' efforts weren't there, and the players don't escape this. It's not just Rafa Benitez's fault. It's not just Farhad Moshiri's fault. Okay, the players picked themselves up towards the end of the season under Frank Lampard, but the players don't escape this. The players were a fucking disgrace last season, an absolute fucking disgrace. And a couple of good performances and a couple of, you know, showings of effort and showings of care and desire doesn't escape from the rest of the season, which was utterly, embarrassingly atrocious. Doesn't escape from that because you've put a bit of effort in for a couple of games at the end of the season. Most of those players still now are nowhere near good enough to play for Everton Football Club and shouldn't be anywhere near Everton Football Club, regardless of how well they've played in the last 4 or 5 weeks. Most of them shouldn't be anywhere near this club because they're not good enough. We lose the derby, and as I said, for me, that was the time that the board should have sacked him. That was the time that the board should have said, right, this isn't working. We haven't won a game in a month. We're in bad form. We're in free fall. We can't seem to get a result. And the fans now have checked out. And I think I said in the instant match reaction after that Merseyside derby, he will never recover from this, Rafa Benitez. Regardless of whether he's here for another day, regardless of whether he's here for another week, another month, another year, another 10 years, he will never recover from that defeat. And the Evertonians and us, and you know, we'll never, ever get over the Copites singing our manager's name because he used to be their manager in a derby that they've won at Goodison. That was why he should never have been appointed anyway in the first place, to be honest. But he was never, ever, ever, you know, he was never going to recover from that. Simple as that, never going to recover from that. We then played Arsenal at Goodison, which was an interesting one because we won it. And we won it in the last, 5 minutes. Damari Gray with an absolute worldie of a strike to win it. And it was sort of like an air of relief. Right, oh my God, we've got that first win in two months in the Premier League. Can we pick ourselves up now? And Benitez kept saying, and, you know, it wasn't just Benitez, to be fair. The board kept saying, you know, we're going to have a better second half of the season. We've got that win now. Sometimes you only need that one win, and then, you know, you can bounce back and you can bounce on. And, you know, we've got that one win now and this, that, and the other. And we got that win. And you're thinking, right, okay, let's go now. We've got a difficult game against Palace away, but let's go and make ourselves hard to beat. At least get a point out of it. Make them work for it. Make it struggle. We turn up less than a week later. We lose 3-1 comfortably. And again, the players go from what was a performance of real hard work and effort and not giving up and desire at Goodison to just utter shambolic again. And it was almost like, oh yeah, forget the Arsenal result. It means nothing because we're back to where we were. We then went to Stamford Bridge and got a point with, again, a team of children because of our COVID situation at that point. And Benitez effectively threw this game, and the young players went out there and went, no, we're not just going to sit and, be tickled by this Chelsea team. We're going to work hard. We're going to battle. Jared Branthwaite got the goal, and we got at that time what was a really good point. But I don't think much of that was down to the manager. I think it was down to the efforts of the young players that were on the pitch at that time. We then didn't play till the 2nd of January because of COVID. We had Christmas off, which was amazing, from the 16th of December to the 2nd of January. Unbelievable break for Everton. We played on the 2nd. We lost to Brighton 3-2 at home. Again, another game that they could have sacked the manager and decided not to. The fans at this point were just absolutely in arms. We then played Norwich away and lost 2-1, which, again, should have seen the sacking of the manager, but it didn't. We then played Villa at home and lost 1-0, which obviously was the game for Duncan Ferguson. So at that point, after Norwich, we'll stop there. Who was managing at that time then? Hang on, bear with me 2 seconds. I just want to have a look at something here because I'm not... I can't quite remember this game against Newcastle away. Anyway, we'll talk about Norwich. So we lose 2-1 to Norwich. At that point, it was almost sort of like, yeah, you're not coming back from this. You're simply not coming back from this. It's as simple as that. And he didn't. The manager was sacked. And thus became the search for a new manager. Thus became the search for a new regime, a new beginning, a new start. At this point, Marcel Brands was well under pressure. And obviously, before all of this, before the game against Norwich, we'd had Marcel Brands come out and say, is it just the players' fault? And then leave his post as Everton Director of Football. So not only were we at the point of needing to sack the current manager and bring in somebody else, the Director of Football had left. We'd just sold an French international left-back because he'd had a falling out with the manager in a very similar fashion to what James Rodriguez did. He got sold. And then days later, we employ days later, we sack Rafael Benitez. And all of a sudden, it's like, hang on. What's going on here? How's this happened? How have we managed to sell an international left back who was our only real source of creativity in the team at that point, albeit he hadn't had a great season up to that point, but he was only our only real source of creativity after losing James Rodriguez and a certain other fella, and we'd sold him to then sack the manager who we'd had a falling out with 2 days later or a week later, whatever it was. But we sacked Benitez, and rightly so, after that game against Norwich, because he needed it. Duncan Ferguson was in the running to become the new Everton manager. He got his opportunity to manage the game against Aston Villa. We lost. It was a poor defeat. It was a real poor performance. I don't think Dunk helped his case very, very much. We then brought in Frank Lampard. We brought in Donny van der Beek. We brought in Dele Alli. We brought in Anwar El Ghazi in January. Why, I don't know. We'd obviously brought in Nathan Patterson. Vitaly Mikalenko would come in to replace Luka Dean. He'd actually come in before Luka Dean had been sold, but we knew he was coming in to replace him. And we brought Frank Lampard in. Again, we had a week of right, well, who's going to be the Everton manager then? Is it going to be Frank Lampard? We had Vitor Pereira literally interviewing himself live on Sky Television, literally basically saying, please, please, please pick me. Please, please, please pick me. I want you to pick me. Please pick me. We had a good 3 or 4 managers whose names were in that list who just made you want to just give up watching football if we'd have brought them into the football club. Roberto Martinez being one of them, which, again, would have been an absolute disaster. And we ended up with Frank Lampard, and I actually think this helped Frank Lampard's case. I think had Frank Lampard have been in the running in the summer when Rafa Benitez was in the running, I don't think there'd have been as many Evertonians who were behind the appointment. And don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of Blues that were behind the Frank Lampard appointment because they liked him as a manager, they thought he was young, he would have known the players, they liked what he did at Chelsea. But there was a lot of Blues, and let's be honest with ourselves, because we need to be honest, but let's be honest with ourselves. There were a lot of Blues at the time that were happy that I'm absolutely sweating here. It's about 58 degrees outside. There was a lot of Blues at the time that were happy that Frank Lampard had been appointed purely because he wasn't Vitor Pereira or Roberto Martinez. It wasn't necessarily a case of, right, I think Frank's the right man for the job. I think Frank's going to take us forward. He's got this experience, he's got that experience. It was more, fuck, we don't want Vitor Pereira because look at how embarrassing he is. He's not only is he not a very good manager, but he's literally crying for the job on Sky Sports. We don't want Roberto Martinez because of how badly that went last time. So it really just left us with, well, there's Dunk there who, okay, we could take a risk on, but the Villa game wasn't great. Frank Lampard, we had experience with Chelsea, with young players working hard, got Chelsea playing really, really well. He'd obviously had experience in the Championship, although we didn't think we needed it. But at this point, we were really, really, really struggling in the league. And this was when the conversation around relegation was really rife. We could genuinely, we don't get this appointment right, we could go down. Because this was the appointment we couldn't afford to get wrong. It wasn't the summer. It wasn't like we were sitting here saying, well, if we get it wrong, then hang on, bear with me a minute. Sorry. It wasn't like we were sitting here going, well, if we get this wrong, then in November or December or January, we can just sack him and bring somebody else in. If we would have gotten this wrong, we would have been fucked. Absolutely fucked. And 99%, maybe a little bit less, but the majority of the Everton fan base were behind the Frank Lampard appointment, I feel, because it wasn't Vitor Pereira and it wasn't Roberto Martinez. And that worked in Frank Lampard's favour, because we'd just gone from appointing a manager in the summer who, before he was even appointed, fans wanted him out and fans didn't want him, and there were banners saying, don't bring this fella in, he's this, he's that, he's the other, to January, where there was the same banners but about Vitor Pereira. We don't want Vitor Pereira, we want Frank Lampard. And then they made the appointment, and it was almost like right, we've got Frank Lampard now, let's get behind him. We wanted Frank Lampard, but it wasn't we wanted him because we all believed he was an unbelievable manager and he was the right fella to take us forward. Some people will have, but I think the majority of Evertonians just didn't want the other candidates. And that worked for Frank, because he come in and all of a sudden we were all happy with the decision. We were all happy with the appointment. Certainly the majority of us were happy with the appointment. And we were hoping he'd hit the ground running. Now, obviously, we lost to Newcastle. I actually can't remember Frank Lampard being in charge of that game against Newcastle. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember Duncan Ferguson taking charge of 2 games. I may be wrong, but it just escaped me who was in charge of that game against Newcastle. Maybe it was Dunk. Maybe it was Frank. I can't remember. But I forgot to mention the cut runs. Obviously, under Rafa Benitez, we'd been knocked out of the League Cup by QPR, which was what it was. We, a lot of Evertonians went down to London on a Wednesday night or whatever it was, and watched us lose to QPR in a game that we made Charlie Austin look like prime Alan fucking Shearer. And yeah, we lost it quite comfortably. But we'd gone relatively far in the FA Cup. We'd beaten Boreham Wood. Again, made them look like a decent team and not a Sunday League team. But we'd gotten to the point where we were in the quarters, not the quarters, sorry, the game before the quarters, round of 16 against Brentford. Frank Lampard comes in, right, fresh start now. We bring Dele Alli in on the same day as Frank Lampard. We bring Donny van der Beek in on the same day as Frank Lampard. Right, time to get your head down, work hard. Now, there's a bit of optimism, there's a bit of positivity. We were still in a dangerous situation, but we can get out of this. We have that game against Newcastle. As I said, at that point, Newcastle was still in the relegation battle. That was almost like right, if we can get something out of Newcastle, then it keeps them in the fight. And obviously it keeps us away from it. They didn't. They ended up beating us 3-1 at St James's. They, I think, climbed out the relegation zone with that win. And we become dangerously close to it. We then played Leeds at Goodison. Well, we played Brentford in between, didn't we? Frank Lampard's first game in charge against Brentford. Beat them 4-1 in the FA Cup. Really good start for Frank Lampard, a team that had beaten us, a couple of weeks before. We'd turned up and we'd absolutely dismantled in the FA Cup. We then played Leeds again, another team that were in and around that same area as us. Badly needed to win that game. We dismantled them. We beat them comfortably. And then I think reality sort of set in. We'd had the win against Brentford. We'd had the win against Leeds. The football was good. The players were sort of working for Frank. It looked a lot better. But then reality set in. We lost to Southampton 2-0 away. And it was almost like, oh shit, we are still in the shit here. We have still got a load of players who aren't good enough to play for this football club. We have still got a load of players who ultimately have thrown the towel in on time and time and time again. And are absolute shithouses. Our away form at this point, as I said, was absolutely atrocious. We'd not taken a point away from home since that game against Chelsea in December. We'd not won an away game since the Brighton game, as I said, in August. Our away form was abysmal. But I think that loss to Southampton was really the one that made everybody go, oh shit. Frank hasn't changed this overnight. He's not got a magic wand. It's not, right, everything's sound now. We are still very, very, very much in a shocking situation here. We then played City at Goodison, lost that 1-0. Again, down to a shocking VAR decision. Obviously, the handball not given against Rodzi, which to this day I still don't know how they got away with that without being investigated for match fixing, because it's just as clear as day. A penalty, the clearest penalty you will ever see. But it wasn't given. They got away with it. But it was another loss, and it was sort of like, well, okay, the performance was very, very good. We worked hard. We managed to battle against a really good Man City team, and we should have had a penalty, and we should have been given a fair chance to get back in the game. But we've still lost the game. Ultimately, it's still a loss. We then had a couple of really, really tough games. We had we had Spurs away. Again, a game where you're thinking, right, how are we going to approach this? And this is where I think Frank Lampard come into a little bit of criticism from Evertonians, because this was when I think a lot of Blues started to think, well, is Frank trying to adopt a new system or adopt a new style or adopt a new way of playing, when in reality, we're not in a position to do that. We're not in a position to do that. We just need to work hard, fight, and do what we can to get results. We were absolutely hammered at Spurs 5-0. I remember being there on the day. It was a shocking performance, shocking result. Again, Frank come under some scrutiny for his decisions, for his starting 11, for his substitutions. It was starting to settle in that I think more of a we're still in it. We were very, very unsure of whether we'd get out of this, and that unsure feeling didn't leave us until after Palace, let's be honest. But it was almost like okay, this isn't going to be as easy as maybe we thought it was going to be after the Leeds result. We then played Wolves at home, lost 1-0. Now, that was a big one, because I think up to that point, we were sort of sitting here thinking, well, our away form is abysmal. We're not winning away. We're losing heavily. Our performances are shite. But I think the majority of us were thinking, but if we're going to win at home every week, or certainly most weeks, then maybe the away form won't really matter. And then we lose to Wolves at home, and it's like, oh shit, we're actually not going to win at home every week. And I think I remember saying in the instant match reaction to the Wolves game, I think I sat here and said, this is a reminder that we're not just shite away from home, we're shite overall. We're really, really bad. And that was where I think a lot of the worry settled in. We had Newcastle then. A fella that jumped out the stadium and handcuffed himself to the post. Adding 10 minutes, we won the game in the end. 99th minute winner by Alex Iwobi. Again, a massive 3 points, a much needed 3 points. Is this going to be the difference now? Can this be the catalyst? We all sat here and said the Leeds game needed to be the catalyst. It wasn't. You know, we all sat here and said, well, okay, can the Newcastle game be the catalyst? It wasn't. We turn up at the London Stadium the week after. We lose 2-1. Sorry, a couple of weeks later, we lose 2-1. Right. What now? This is at the point where it was almost do or die at that point. It was almost do or die. We are in the shit. If you're enjoying this scene, by the way, please hit that like button. 60 people watching. If you could get the likes up, that'd be amazing. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you are enjoying, if you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your comments down below. I'll get involved with as many of them as we can as well. But yeah, the West Ham result again was a big smack in the face of, right, we're really in the shit now. We were down there with Leeds, Burnley, Brentford was still down there at this point. Newcastle had got out of it. So again, one of the teams that we were fighting with had got out of it. They've managed to escape. And Everton are dropping. We were looking, you know, we were the team in the worst form out of those 3 or 4 teams that were in the relegation zone or in and around the relegation zone. We then played Burnley away. And this was the game that I thought would be the sort of main, you know, not main game, but the whenever you think about this season, I thought it would be the Burnley game we'd think about. Obviously now it's not, it's the Palace game, which is great, but I think a lot of us thought, well, is it going to be the Burnley game that we think about? We go to Turf Moor, obviously rearranged game. It was meant to be played on Boxing Day, rearranged because Burnley had 2 players out injured and decided to get the game cancelled. And we lose 3-2. And I just remember sitting here after the game, doing the instant match reaction, and even after the instant match reaction, I just remember sitting here and thinking, that's it, we're gone. Because that almost, although it was, you know, again, there was still 6-7 games to go, that game almost felt like whoever loses this will go down. Because even at that point, Leeds were sort of flirting with it, but Leeds were still picking up results. They brought in Jesse Marsh. They'd had a little bit of a bounce back. They looked at a point like they were going to get themselves out of it. And I remember sitting here and thinking, pardon me, hang on. I remember sitting here thinking, that's it. We're done for. We're gone. We are going to get relegated. The players seem to have just given up with Frank already. It seemed like they were bored with the way in which we were playing. And I think that was when, it sort of triggered in Frank's head of, right, we can't afford to try and play lovely football, be it at home or be it away. We can't afford to sit here and say, well, we're going to play this style or we're going to play that style or we're going to play this system, we're going to play that system. We can't afford to do that. And I think Frank said in one of his press conferences, it's not about the style of play or the way in which we play. It's about winning games of football. We can worry about styles and systems and tactics and all of that next season. For now, we just need to fight, and find a way to win. And that sort of hit home because I think that was one of the main impactful things Frank Lampard said, which made every Evertonian go, actually, do you know what? He's right. He knows what he's talking about. And although some of his decisions had been questioned, some of his substitutes, some of his team selections, although they were all very, very questionable, it was almost like, bang on, you know, that's right. It's not about the way in which we play. It's not about the system. It's not about the style. It's about winning games. And I think the admittance from the manager of the situation we were in was refreshing to hear as well, because it was the first time we'd heard the manager this season, including the previous manager, actually admit that we were in the shit after that game against Burnley. You know, all as Rafa Benitez said was we'll have a boss second half of the season. We didn't. All as the board ever used to say is we've had injuries and we'll be all right. That was the first time that we heard the manager come out and say, no, we are in the shit here. And we just need to find ways to win games of football. And I just remember feeling so low after that Burnley game. So low, feeling like, that's it. We won't make the points up to get out of this. We play Man United at home. We win that game. A big sigh of relief. But it was almost like, right, well, that's made up for the Burnley result now. It's not. No, that result against Man United could have been massive had we have gotten something out of Burnley. Bearing in mind, we were cruising the game against Burnley 2-1 up, and we threw it. We completely threw it. We win against Man United. We play Leicester at home a couple of days later. We're losing 1-0. Last couple of minutes, we get a goal. We get an equaliser. And I think that was the start of the sort of brewing of, you know, we all look at Chelsea, and we'll go through the Chelsea game in a minute, but we all look at Chelsea and think that was the game that it changed, because that was the game when the fans got outside the stadium. That was the game when the fans made the noise, and that was when it all changed. But for me, it was Man United and Leicester, because the Man United game was right. We've cancelled out the Burnley result now, so let's jump on this. And the Leicester result was one of them that, had we have lost, we'd have all been sitting here saying the exact same thing. Oh, again, back to square one, and a missed opportunity and this, that, and the other. But we drew with a result that felt like a win because of how we did it. And it was almost like, I don't know whether anybody else agrees with this, but it was almost like fuck, if we make noise, if we get behind these players, if we show our fight and our support and our intensity, they'll get behind it. They'll battle, they'll fight. The celebrations from Lampard showed that. The players seemed so relieved after that Leicester result, after that Richarlison goal. And it was like, right, this is the time to jump on it now. This is where we need to do something as a fan base. We had the derby. Again, we lost that game. Awful refereeing decisions in that game as well. We spoke about the City decision before, but the decision to not give a penalty for the foul on Anthony Gordon, the decision to not send Sadio Mane off. I felt hard done by the derby. We lost 2-0 ultimately. We kept them at bay for 70 minutes, whatever it was. They're an unbelievable football team. They managed to get the win in the end, but it wasn't a disheartened, we've just been battered in the derby. We should be ashamed of ourselves. It was a, right, we've lost to a team that we expected to lose to in a game we expected to lose. Forget about it. All eyes on Chelsea now. And that was when it all changed. That was when it absolutely all changed, wasn't it? That was when Hans Tors and everybody else that was involved in the organisation of those meets of the coach before the game, the blue flares, the singing, the shouting, the screaming, creating an atmosphere that ultimately was going to transfer from outside of the ground inside to Goodison Park. Listen, I'm not condoning setting fireworks off outside of team hotels before the game, but it worked. It worked. Chelsea players openly come out and said, yeah, we were kept up, and then we won that game. But forget the fireworks, because that again, that's always taken too far, and that I'm not a big fan of that. The flares, the meeting the coach, the thousands of Evertonians standing outside the Goodison 2-3 hours before the game, singing, screaming, shouting, getting behind the players, riling the players up, riling ourselves up for the game. That is unbelievable, and that needs to be carried into next season. And as we all expected, it created an atmosphere that transferred into the stadium. The atmosphere on that day was unbelievable from the first minute to the last minute. Richarlison gets the important goal just after half-time. We win the game. Okay. That's another important 3 points. At this point, Burnley, I think they just sacked Sean Dyche at this point. They were staggering a little bit. Leeds were staggering. It was almost like, right, go and jump on this now. We had an away game at Leicester. Bearing in mind, we'd won one away game all season. We ramped it up. Okay, we can't go and stand outside the Goodison Park 2-3 hours before the game because it's away. What will we do instead? Well, instead, the game's on a Sunday, so let's just go to Finch Farm on the Saturday when the players will be leaving and make as much noise at Finch Farm as we possibly can as well. So what did we do? Hundreds, again, if not thousands of Evertonians went all the way down to Hale Wood, including myself, stood outside the Finch Farm in the boiling hot. Blue flares, smoke, banners, flags, all the works, and created as much noise as we possibly could. What happened the next day? The players turned up and put in an unbelievable performance and beat a Leicester team that, again, were difficult to beat. All of a sudden, consecutive wins, which was like fucking gold dust to Everton. Consecutive wins, two wins out of 2. We're 1 win away from being out of this. We're 1 win away from being safe. 3 weeks ago, we were thinking we've just lost to Burnley, we're down. We're now 1 win away from being out of this. We play Watford again. Fans meet outside of Finch Farm. We go to Watford. I was there on that day at Vicarage Road. Awful game of football. Awful performance. Awful results. Nothing much to say about it. It was shite. But it was almost like that was a missed chance, that. But put it behind us. Brentford at home. Again, fans meeting before the game. Welcoming the players. Welcoming the coach. And the Brentford game didn't quite go to plan, did it? We lost it 3-2. We lost the game that we really, really should have won. We really should have won. But I think one really, really important thing that we can all take from the Brentford game, and we all did take from the Brentford game, was we didn't get disheartened. The players didn't get disheartened. The fans didn't get disheartened. The manager didn't get disheartened. It was almost like a realisation that we were still in the situation we were in, but well, this has been working. We've just won at Leicester. The fans at Leicester were fucking unbelievable, by the way. Unbelievable. The fans at Chelsea were unbelievable. Even Watford, we never stopped singing in that away end for hours before the game, hours during the game, and then hours on the way home. We get to Brentford, as I said, we lose. Little bit of shit, are we in? We're still in this situation. We still could, we still could throw this, but the teams around us were dropping points as well. We're in good form. We're losing games. We're struggling. We get to Palace, do or die, and the Crystal Palace game is. I've said this before, and I'll say it again because I stick with it, and it's really, really, really. Does anybody else find it really weird how alike a film this season was? I'm gonna sit closer to my screen now because I've just been sitting about 300 mile away from the screen because of the fact that the sun was in my eyes. But now I'm gonna sit closer and I'm gonna actually shrink myself because I'm sweating to absolute bollocks. But does anybody else find it really, really, really weird how alike a fictional story this season actually was, and how alike a film script this season actually was as well? Like, if this season, Everton's season, was shown in the cinema as a film, you would almost sit there and think, who the fuck's thought of that story? That's an unbelievable story. It's got an unbelievable fairy tale ending. There was hard points. There was points where you thought, oh my God, they're going to be all right now, and then they weren't. There was points where, you thought, oh, they're gone, but they weren't. They kept fighting. They kept working. Ups, downs. You had the manager situation at the start of the season. You had Frank Lampard come in, and it didn't quite work. Like, it's literally like the script of a Hollywood movie this season. Literally like the script of a Hollywood film. And yet it just baffles me. It proper baffles me how alike a fictional story this season has been. And that Crystal Palace game was the pinnacle, wasn't it? It was the final scene. It was the, oh my God, it's be all and end all here now. And how fairy tale can it get to going into a game that we needed to win? Greeting the coach in the way that we did before the game, unbelievably. Again, fireworks going off, not outside the team hotel this time, but fireworks going off, and the blue flares and the chanting and the screaming and the flags and everything. Getting into the game, half time, we're 2-0 down. The goal scored at the Palace, the second goal, should have been sent off for what was the worst challenge I've seen to not receive a red card ever at Goodison. Clearly the referees are against us again. Clearly the referees in the league wanted us to go down because they wanted that big team have gone down sort of storyline to run with. 2-0 down, and I remember sitting there turning to my dad and saying, and being virtually on the brink of crying and saying to me, Dad, it's done. We're gone. We're done. We're not coming back from this. It's over. We're gone. And I remember my dad saying, it's not done until it's done. It's not done until it's done. And that second half is, don't get me wrong, this season has been a shambles, and I hope that we never, ever, ever have to go through anything like this season ever again, any of us. But I say this, and I say it with absolute truth. If I could relive that second half again, I would do it in an instant. Not just Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal, not just the pitch, getting on the pitch at the end, not just the scenes before the game. If I could relive that entire second half, I would do it in an instant. In fact, I would pay whatever money I have in my bank account to relive the emotion and the feeling of that second half at Goodison. It was unbelievable. We get one back, good header by Mason Holgate, Michael Keane puts it in. We get another back, Richarlison scruffy, and you're thinking, right, a draw. At that point, considering where we were, 2-0 down, a draw wouldn't have been the worst result, but we needed to win, and the players knew we needed to win, and the fans knew we needed to win. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal, listen, whatever you think about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whether you like him, whether you don't like him, whether you think he's, took the piss this season, whether you think he should be sold, whatever you think about him, he will be forever written in the Everton, in the books of Everton Football Club for that goal. We sit here and talk about Barry Orn, and Barry Orn's got his own song, and we idolise Barry Orn. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is on that level now for me. And again, how fairy tale, how Hollywood is it? How movie script is it that the striker who has spent, last season, the season before, was unbelievable, scoring goals, working hard, you were sitting here thinking he's amazing, he's the next best thing. All of this season injured. When he come back, he wasn't on form. There was criticism of his effort, of his desire. How apt is it that he gets the winning goal in that fashion? In a proper Dominic Calvert-Lewin fashion. Watch the goal again, and I know we've all watched it 822,000 times. But if you watch the goal again, it is pure Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. If you were to have somehow edited Dom out of that goal and said to any football fan in this country, and you were to edit the team kit or whatever, and you were to just see the animation of the way in which the goal happened, and you would have said, who scored that goal? Every football fan is saying Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Every one of them. And the game ends, as I said, from protests to pitch invasions, from pitch invasions because we're unhappy with the board and the performances, to pitch invasions because we've stayed up. It just felt like for that last couple of weeks of the season, that was our Everton Football Club. That was my Everton Football Club that I grew up supporting, that I grew up loving. And that was headed by Frank Lampard, and Frank Lampard deserves a ridiculous amount of credit for that. But ultimately, as I said at the start of the live stream, and as I will say again, this season, this club, these players were saved by us as fans. Simple as that. And it doesn't excuse what we went through. As I said, we'll be doing loads of live streams and videos over the summer talking about the board, who for me still need to go. Bill Kenwright needs to go. Denise Barrett-Baxendale needs to go. People need to lose their jobs because we cannot get away with it being, yeah, but look at how boss Palace was. Look at how great you all felt in the game against Palace. No, we were in the Palace situation because of the dreadful decisions made at board level previous to this season, and that cannot be forgiven. There's still players in that team that aren't good enough and need to go, regardless of the efforts they made in the last 3-4 weeks of the season. We will be doing a keep and sell video over the next week or so as well, so you'll find out who I mean by that. But it very, very much was a Hollywood fairy tale season, and it ended in the most fairy tale way, didn't it? I hope we never, ever, ever go through it again. I really do. But it wouldn't really be Everton if we didn't go through something like that, would it? It wouldn't really be Everton if we didn't go through something like that. What I'd give next season for just mid-table mediocrity where there's no worry, no stress, it's just, yeah, it is what it is. But imagine we ever win a trophy, by the way. Imagine, I say we ever win as if we've never won a trophy. Imagine the next time we win a trophy. I don't think I'll be seen for about 3 or 4 weeks, mate. I really don't. I'll just be on the bevies every night for 3, 4, 5 weeks. Mad After James, has been a while since I made it to the team. Sorry about not making it to some form of... No worries, my mate. Thank you very much for the donation. Thank you very much for the £5. Really, really do appreciate it. You don't have to apologise, mate. You don't have to donate either. I really, really do appreciate that, my mate. We had Arsenal at the end, Carter says, and then Arsenal at the end, credits. I said it before the Arsenal game. Arsenal was always... If we're talking about this situation where this season was a movie, Arsenal was always a post-credit team. And what a post-credit scene is, if you've watched any of the Marvel films, at the end of every Marvel film there's a post-credit scene. You'd always get dead excited for it, dead happy for it. It's always fucking shite. The expectation that you had for it is well higher than what it actually is. And that was what Arsenal was. We had our end of, we had our final Thanos, scene at Palace. The Arsenal game was the post-credit scene that you stay for because you know you've got to, but really you're not asked about, and it's shite. That was what the Arsenal game was. Jake says, yes, Cam, just joined the live and age. You're talking about Palace, not to say your topic, but do you have any more transfer news? If not, that's fine. Just want to say your boss, mate. Thank you very much, Jake. Up to now, I don't think so, mate, if I'm being honest with you. Let me just double check our socials and see if there's anything on there. According to Mark Douglas, funds from any potential sale of Richarlison could be used to sign Hull City's Keane Lewis Potter, who's valued at 30 million, apparently. But again, that's just very typical. Just transfer talk. Nothing much. Nothing much. Apparently, Palace are interested in Harry Winks, which is great. But we will be doing a transfer video over the next couple of days or so as well. So we'll talk through the latest on that sort of sense. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums up the season, doesn't it? I still can't quite get over that Palace result and that Palace game, to be honest with you, and it really, really, really was. It really, really, really was just a whirlwind of the last 12 months. As I said, from the moment Carlo Ancelotti left and now, it's just been an absolute whirlwind. But hopefully, it's not as manic and stressful next season. And hopefully, as I said, Frank Lampard can bring in the players that he wants. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, players like that. But hopefully, Frank can bring in the players that he wants, strengthen where we need to strengthen, and then obviously we'll go from there. We'll go from there. Whether or not we can challenge for something next season or not, I don't know. But we'll. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix this, make this look as professional as possible. Yeah, but we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see next season. Obviously, we'll have loads more content before then. But I think that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. If you've watched this as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. As I said, we'll be back over the next couple of days with some transfer talk, and I'm going to do a sell-keep video as well, because I think it's interesting. Apparently, Louis Saha thinks we can get top 4. Yeah, I love Louis Saha. He gave me some great memories when I was a kid, but that is optimistic beyond optimistic, isn't it, really? Let's be honest. But anyway, big thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new as well. That would mean a massive amount to me. We'll be back over the next couple of days, so don't forget to look out for that. But yeah, finally we can put this season behind us and forget about it and look forward to the future. That's all we can do now. Be positive, look forward to the future, and see what the future holds. That's about as much as we can do. But big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on The Mighty Blues.